Geo, are you ready to enter the Gauntlet?
I'm scared.
You should be. That's the correct. You should
I'm
need
worried
to
about being.
respect it.
I'm worried about being upended as a midway, but we'll see what happens. It'll be the ultimate. The Gauntlet's the ultimate filter on this
The
thing of ours.
Gauntlet is serving a very important role in separating the men from the boys. So
Has anyone gotten
let's see.
filtered before?
I think at
well,
the end of the show, once I've had all of my guests, we should take the lower half of the high score table and just get them all to delete their YouTube channels.
There
it's
you
for
go.
everybody's good.
There should be a game show. That could be a game show. They call it like the lol cow speed run or something. Yeah. Can you like get a character who's mentally fragile on YouTube to like speed run the transition into lol cowdom? That'd be amazing. But
all right, round one: music, economics, or cosmology.
Oh, this is hard. I might test myself by picking cosmology, but you know what? Let's pick. What do you mean by cosmology? Do you mean like?
Oh, it's questions about the beginning of time. I mean, they're probably from a more like. I think there's a mixture of some that are more theological leaning and some that are more science leaning.
All right. You know what? Just to challenge myself right off the bat, let's pick cosmology. I wanted to pick music, but well, maybe who knows.
Well, you have to come on next year and talk about music, or weave it into a future answer. Yeah. So the universe began with a big bang. The universe is a simulation.
Oh boy.
Or an alien civilization seeded Earth with life. And remember, you can either argue for or against any of these.
Okay. This is so hard. Because I would piss so many people off if I answered the alien one. It's cringe. It's cool to believe in aliens now.
Yeah, true.
Let's go with the universe began with a big bang because I think that's got some theological leanings. So,
are you arguing for or against this?
I would say I would argue against. Okay, not okay. It's hard to say because I think that there was an omega point, a singularity point, in which the current manifestation of what we know as the universe was probably coalesced into being. Sort of the revealing of being is sort of something that probably did have a definitive singularity point, right? Even Plantinga talks about this. You know, I mean, a Catholic theologian came up with the Big Bang, right?
Right.
But in terms of the way, from what I understand, now don't quote me in terms of like precise Catholic theology. I have many friends who do that. I'm not one of them. I'm not that well read on in terms of the nitty gritty. But I think that the Big Bang, I remember a philosophy professor who became my mentor many years ago said that, you know, this like Big Bang stuff is basically like metaphysics for people who don't want to believe in God. In the sense that, for example, do you remember that Lawrence Krauss book, Universe from Nothing, was it called?
Yes. And he was talking about how an empty volume of space can spontaneously create pairs of particles and things.
Right. But again, the biggest problem is to create massive systems that have form, that have a form of intelligence, that have a form of energy exchange and particle exchange. They still can't like pinpoint the exact Higgs boson into which that coalesced from nothing into something, or rather from, this is going to sound kind of Buddhist, you know, like the Shunyata, the mutual arising of all things and the mutual ceasing of all things. There's no definitive point or particle that decided to manifest reality into being from non-being. I think the problem with the strict materialist version of the Big Bang is that you're trying to essentially say that something from nothing, you can't explain nothingness, because I think nothingness in a strictly metaphysical sense is something in the sense of it being a form of potentiality. It is a virtuality that springs forth that is yet to be discovered. So I think if you're looking at it from that view, you could say that even though the Big Bang in terms of our universe had a sort of omega point had a point of meaning, or a point from which a singularity arose that coalesced into things that would eventually transpire into advanced systems of intelligence, ecology, celestial formations. I think there was something previous that we can't really grasp. We can only view it as sort of a form of grace that came from that reality. So I think the Big Bang Theory is not inconsistent with a theological understanding of being. It's just you have to have a more expanded view of what people say by nothing. Lawrence Krauss, who was on the flight logs, by the way.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, him and Steve Finger were on the flight logs. They mean annihilative nothing. They mean a very unphilosophic material nothing, in that something ceases to be. But what?
It's kind of equivocation, isn't it? It's not.
It's very much equivocation, yeah. Because he's using those elementary particles in that book to say, "Well, see, this is how complex things can arise from very simple parts." But then, what sparked that chain of events is sort of like, "Oh, it's not how it works." Okay, trust the science, right? Believe the science, right? But sorry to cut you off, Linda. But my point being is, I'm going all over the place. But my point being is that when it comes to complex systems, when you have a very annihilative and material version of what quote unquote nothing is, it's not viewed as a form of potentiality. It's a very unphilosophic form of saying that, well, it does not exist anymore. But even within the parameters of their own physics, nothing truly does not exist anymore. A corpse that layeth on the ground and rots still exists in some form of an elementary particle. Heat death doesn't really die. I'm not a scientist. I don't know the exact. I'm not a physicist. I don't know the exact process. But energy can only dissipate. It doesn't truly wane, in a sense. Same with elementary particles. So even within their own parameter of the way that matter and the way that the form to matter transforms, there is no quote unquote death into nothingness. Nothingness, to them, is so philosophically perverse, and perverse in a way. It is a perversity, or at least from a theological sense. Because really, what is nothing? Nothing is a rearrangement. When it comes to the nothing of, and again, I'm using, kind of semi-Buddhist, semi-Heideggerian language in terms of like, nothing is something, the nothing transforms into a form of worlding that comes into being, that reveals itself. That is what this basic particle exchanges are. They reveal into another form. So to say that the Big Bang was sort of like the singularity point from which reality and all reality is manifested, what does that even look like? And especially from the perspective of human consciousness, what does that even look like? True nothingness. So I say that the Big Bang can be accounted for, but it's this question of what, like, people, like a lot of Reddit midwits, they rack their brains over like, oh man, what came before the Big Bang, man? And they're like, it can't be God, it can't be that, because that's like, it's a negative nothing, it's an absolute zero. But what is absolute zero? You can't picture it, right? And people nowadays, even, there's a lot of very advanced theory cells that work in, for example, object-oriented ontology, that try to rack their brains about what would matter look like without human consciousness. It's even this was solved a few hundred years ago, even with Kant. It's like, what's the point of imagining what is life without human comportment to rearrange that perspective itself? I'm the basic Kantian formation of that. The faculties of understanding give form to things that are res extensa, that are synthetic a prioris, like time, space, measure, extension, that we give for. That's the basic Copernican inversion of Kant, right? Not that I'm a big Kantian, but the point still stands, is that in the philosophic tradition, it's like to say that, to rack your brain over what came before the Big Bang, what came before something, it's philosophically irrelevant. It's spiritually irrelevant, because even though you can posit a noumenal distinction between what is matter, what is form, and what is nothing, it doesn't really matter, because you still have to presuppose that there was that point which gave birth to the quote unquote something that we're experiencing in our conscious reality right now. So I think, was the Big Bang a reality? You can prove it through physics, of course, but to totally like do this like midwittery over, well, what came before the Big Bang? Is it not just a simulation? What if there's infinite worlds? There could probably be infinite worlds. Who knows? But the point being is that there was a something in the sense that nothing is still a generative force. That is, I think, the gift that 20th century philosophy has given us and 20th century theology. But yeah, so I think that was a long-winded explanation to say that like the Reddit I hecking love science version of the Big Bang is sort of reductive and doesn't really account for everything. So, what do you think, Lambda? What's your?
Well, I was just going to make a comment that the question of why is there something rather than nothing is, of course, a very deep and difficult question that I don't know in some ways that there is a straightforward answer on the side of the atheist or the theist. I don't think either side has a really simple way to kind of explain what, like, why does God exist, for example.
First you had a beard, that was something, now you shave. That's not
well, this is part of my ontological exploration, actually. But I sometimes thought that you know the ontological argument, which I'm not sure if it's valid. It's kind of a mind bender, and I probably generally end up coming down on the side of I don't think it quite holds together. And yet, I feel like when I'm thinking about the ontological argument, you know, necessary beings and contingent beings and so on, I feel like I'm approaching some kind of intuition about God exists rather than nothing because God is a necessary being.
Right.
And in some sense, there is some kind of self-necessary property of God in the form that he is, and that as a creator, he must create, and as a loving God, he must love. And you get all these kind of fascinating, like the answer to why there is something rather than nothing is almost like out of the logic of existence.
Well, then the question exactly, but then the question is, why does God create? Why do we have an impulse to create? Why do we do this? I mean, it wasn't just for giggles, you know what I mean? I think creation, in the sense of why is there something rather than nothing, is beyond our understanding. But I do believe, you know, as an artist myself, I do believe that creation is sort of the closest thing you can achieve to immortality. And in a way, it goes beyond just self-expression. It's not that, I mean, was God expressing himself when he created the universe after the Big Bang? It goes beyond our understanding of expression. It's more of like, again, this goes back to love and grace. What is love but the affordance of creation, the affordance to be? That is God's love. And people say, like, people, again, a lot of people, both theologically, like in terms of Christianity, in terms of atheists, there's a lot of like grifters and charlatans who have contorted the message of God's love to mean all sorts of very not exactly copacetic understandings. But to me, I think when I think of God's love, I think of the allowance to be. That is really the sort of form of being that is a gift that is given through grace to us. And all of the other nitty gritties about people being destroyed and people having their lives ruined and things coming to an end, I think, like, from a divine perspective, that's beyond the point, in my opinion. Not to say that we should trivialize people suffering, of course, but I'm saying that from a higher perspective, what is suffering but an absence? And that absence, again, is afforded to us the freedom to have that lack, to have an absence. That, I think, gets a lot of heavy theological questions. But of course, you know, in Buddhism, for example, these questions are also irrelevant because there's no presupposition of, say, the Cartesian recursion, where you can keep going back to the ad infinitum. What was it called? The fallacy you can't keep going back forever. The tortoise shells, right?
Yes, tortoises all the way down.
Yeah. Like, I think that's also part of the ontological argument. But no, but like in other systems of belief, that's sort of an irrelevancy, because, like, if you ask, like, for example, if you ask Nagarjuna, why is there something rather than nothing? He goes, well, it just is. So it's no point. You know, that's which I think, from a certain perspective, certainly from a Western theological perspective, a lot of Buddhism can descend into a form of nihilism from our perspective. But I think, it still has the sort of that operatic nature is getting at a lesson that is profound, which is to be comfortable with being. And I think the question of like what came before being shows a fundamental angst or anxiety that we have about ourselves in being to begin with. So the question is almost irrelevant from that sense, because how do you be comfortable with existence in general rather than what came before it? The coming before existence, that is sort of a thirst for annihilation. That is a thirst, that is a nirvanic principle, and I think a lot of people are too wrapped up in it. They should
Mm.
rather should suffice to the question of what are you doing in being currently? That is
Mm.
a very profound question. But a lot of people, they have this angst over like nothingness and
Uh,
anxiety over what came before being. It's like, well,
uh.
you
Well,
can't even live. You can't even get out. I can't even get out of my parents' basement. Come on. No, I
well,
try. I'm trying. I'm trying.
s- spe-
Patreon.com/Shine Productions to get me out of my parents' basement.
well, look, time is running away from us, and
All right,
we'll
next
have to
question.
speed up because otherwise I will miss the beginning of house group which
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
determined to make it to this evening. So, but you got
Whoa,
15 points for round one, which is a
that's
stonking
crazy.
start. So you're off to a strong start. Ethics, history, or metaphysics?
Uh, let's challenge. I'm going to challenge myself. Let's go with ethics. Here you go, ethics.
Animals deserve the same ethical considerations as humans. Freedom of speech should never be limited. There are no moral justifications for war.
Oh man, if I
What
pick
do you
an
think of this
easy
platter of
one,
questions?
the freedom of speech one's the hardest one, in my opinion. But
Okay.
let's go with they're all good questions.
Mm.
Um, let's go with animals, the animal one.
All right.
Okay, what's your opinion, Lambda? Or you're gonna bias me if I don't know. Well,
Oh,
go ahead,
I'm
go ahead.
prepared to give my opinion in a sentence, which is that animals deserve considerable ethical consideration, but categorically less than humans.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, believe like
Should we call it there? Should we say that's
yeah,
the round?
I think that
How many
I
points
think
do you
that
want?
there's a stewardship towards animals. There, even though we use them for meat, we use them in various other applications of animal husbandry. There should be a consideration to take care of them the best we can. I think industrial farming is cruel, but at the same time, I think that in terms of the same level of animal consideration, I mean, human consideration. I mean, humans are the only ones that really can experience anxiety over their own limited time in this world. But I do think that animals deserve a form of stewardship that is limiting their needless cruelty and slaughter. And I do think that certain animals need to be protected. I was actually watching because my friend Martin posted the full English translation of African Aditto. I don't know if you've ever seen African Aditto.
No.
But it's about post colonialism in Africa. I believe the mercenary Mad Mike Hoare is in it, and it really goes
Hmm.
through the politics of Africa by this Italian film crew who almost died several times, by the way, filming this,
Wow.
but they escaped with the skin of their teeth. And there was a moment where they're talking about the huge game reserves and the huge animal sanctuaries that was maintained by the Zulus and then maintained by the British. And then, of course, these animals were slaughtered in the tens of thousands to for pennies on the dollar to feed people. And I'm thinking like that has a lot of very sticky ethical implications. But I just think it was barbaric in a way to slaughter these magnificent creatures. Uh, without saying too much, you know what? Let's move on. Without saying too much, that can get into a very. But I do think like to these sacred animal preserves that were maintained for thousands of years, just to be destroyed like that was. I mean, there could have been a better way. Put it that way, without getting into too much hot water. So yeah.
I'm always struck by the last verse of the book of Jonah,
Hmm.
where God is saying, he's had this plant grow up and then die, and Jonah is there moping around about the plant, and yet Jonah doesn't care about the city of Nineveh at all. Um,
Hmm.
and God says, well, look, if you care so much about the plant, why can I not care about Nineveh, which is
No.
full of many thousands of people and also many cattle? And I believe cattle is actually the last word in Hebrew in the book of Jonah. But it's there
Interesting.
that God is showing that part of the reason he ought to care for the city is actually because of the cows that were in the city.
Oh yeah.
So there you go. Just a nice little example of the moral value of animals. And yeah, well, okay. Here's one quick last question, and then we can move on from this round. Is there a number of? Ooh, okay. Let's make it rabbits.
All right.
That would be equivalent to a human life.
Oh God, that's impossible.
Would you
Depends what
be
type of
prepared to
rabbit.
kill 100 million rabbits to save one life?
Well, I've hunted rabbits before, so I maybe not 100 million, but it would have to be a game farm of rabbits to save a human life, I guess. Maybe like 10,000.
10,000. All right, very good.
They breed so much. I mean, it's no big deal.
That's true.
As long as they're dispatched humanely, I guess. Then.
Well, indeed. Actually, if you dispatch an animal humanely, it's probably coming to a much better end than it would do in the wild, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, deer, even rabbits. There is huge rabbit starvation in certain places that have banned hunting and so forth. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm going to give you another 15.
Nice.
Round 3. Cinema and theatre, world affairs, or epistemology?
Oh my God. I know epistemology is going to be the hardest one. I want to pick cinema and theater, but a lot of people have done that though.
True.
So I'm going to tease the geocells by not picking cinema and theater. Let's go with world affairs.
All right. The world is entering a new Cold War era. The West is in decline. Water scarcity will become a primary source of conflict.
Wow. This is crazy. Let's go with, people sort of know my opinion on the top two. So let's go with water scarcity. Let's go with that.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Right. Water scarcity. I think that water scarcity will certainly be an issue. But there has to be a way to incentivize, particularly India and China from
China.
from being serious with their water cleanliness and consumption. I think that maybe water scarcity is a bigger deal that a lot of like climatologists probably make too much out of. But I do think the pollution of water is very concerning. Coming from a country that has, I believe, the most fresh water in the world, Canada, I do think that
if you zoom in on Canada on a random point, you probably hit water, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, especially in Ontario. But I do think that clean water has been shown to actually be a crisis point with a lot of global conflicts. And because water is sort of that sacred mainstay in the human psyche for a reason. And I do think the pollution of water is a huge issue that, destroys millions of people every year. But at the same time, I do think that eventually, as newer technologies arise, that maybe we could probably solve a lot of these issues. But I mean, water pollution is a global issue, and the future does not look very good. But I think if you can incentivize the other larger superpowers that have the most populations in the world, like India and China, to clean up their water, but that's going to be a huge task, and I think millions of people will probably perish because of it. The future of water security is a huge issue, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good, and there probably will be maybe not wars over water, but certainly the exacerbation of certain smaller global skirmishes over water security. That is something that leftoids have probably correct in terms of worrying about water. A lot of climate people are probably correct in that.
What do you think about things like fluoride in the water or other
Mm.
chemicals?
It's an issue. I think the degree of fluoride and fluoridation in the water and the fact that you're getting fluoridation in toothpaste, for example, it probably doesn't need to be there. I'm not as that. I used to be a lot bigger on this issue when I used to listen to a lot of Alex Jones, but I think
Sure.
if municipalities get rid of fluoridation, there probably is better ways to ensure teeth health than the unintended consequences of more chemicals in the food and water. So that's just my position. You're getting fluoridation either way. To put more in there is sort of, yeah, scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I figure that I'm probably on balance
Yeah.
pro fluoride in toothpaste,
Mm.
and I'm I'm generally concerned that something that people are ingesting, probably probably quite a long list of things that people are
Oh
ingesting, that
yeah, definitely.
there's
Yeah.
something out there that's
Yeah.
causing all kinds of harm. Um, so yeah, I don't think drinking copious amounts of fluoride is, we don't really know, I think, quite what it's doing. So why risk it,
Yeah.
is kind of my
We already consume already like too many chemicals. It's just
yeah.
water is the lifeblood of all civilizations.
They should
So
put
yeah.
protein in the water.
Yeah, people simply should put Ozempic in the probably not because Ozempic does have a lot of negative side effects.
Was it
So,
Ozempic, as far as this is a chemical I only first heard about like a month ago, but am I
mm,
right that you take it, you lose your appetite, as long as you don't overeat, you're probably fine, but if you take Ozempic and then eat like vast quantities of food, then it has really negative effects.
yes, yes, because it was originally a diabetic medication that people were using for off-market use of weight loss. Um, some people it doesn't do anything for, but also what's disturbing is I think a lot of the studies that have come out because of the mass adaptation of Ozempic with a lot of people that it doesn't necessarily decrease or shorten the fat cells in your body. A lot of it's decreasing muscle mass, which is even so it's counterintuitive.
Interesting.
You need more muscle in order to be more metabolic and to real like
Yeah,
hypertrophy is key to lasting weight loss. And
yeah,
but so it's counterintuitive, man. A lot of people they gain the
yeah.
weight back when they stop taking Ozempic. So
And if you put on muscle, obviously the raw number that you see on the scales goes up.
right,
Um,
right. But that
but
the
that's actually
muscle,
putting your metabolism up, and in the long
yeah.
run, will burn off fat.
Yeah, there's no
Interesting.
easy take it from me, man. There's no easy answer to weight loss. There's no
I
magic
always,
pill.
yeah. I mean, it's obviously a very complicated subject. Um, I've put on weight in the last year or so that I didn't want to put on,
Mm,
and
mm.
before that, I had lost quite a lot of weight and was in really good shape.
But
And kind of my conclusion over all of this is that it's primarily a psychological battle, and
oh,
actually
yeah.
understanding the nutrition is like relatively easy compared to
Mm.
modifying behavior, right?
No, you can understand the nutrition, but it's acting upon the nutritional
Uh,
understanding is very difficult. Yeah.
and frankly, unless you are genuinely motivated with a very powerful long-term vision,
Mhm. Mhm.
then it's or you're in some sort of like controlled environment where
Or
some
horrible
external
depression where
force.
you just don't eat. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, yes, there's but yes, if your predisposition is for overeating and you have the ability to overeat, the only way you're going to overcome that is with a genuine positive vision that you strongly believe in the
Yes.
long term.
Oh, 100%.
That's kind of my take. All right. Well, look, I'm going to give you. Let me see. I'm going to give you 14. Still a very good score.
Oh, there you go.
On to round 4.
Whoa!
Psychology, elite theory, and theology.
So many good well, we kinda covered theology a little bit. I mean, that would be interesting, but Psychology. I want to say elite theory, but let's go with psychology. Let's go with psychology.
All right.
I
Social
feel like I
media
want
is
to keep coming
psychologically
back on the
harmful.
show to keep picking different topics.
It's like when the well, having just talked about weight loss, I was going to use the analogy of the chocolate box being circulated. Right, you go to somebody's party and then they're like,
Yeah.
you know, the box. You're
We're
only going to see the box a couple more times. You've got to
oh
choose
man.
carefully.
We're Costco guys. Of course you get the double chunk chocolate. So you know.
So, social
Oh,
media is psychologically harmful. Nature is significantly more influential than nurture, or dreams offer significant insights into our subconscious.
last one. Let's do dreams.
Mm,
I am an Orthodox Jungian, so I believe that dreams have a powerful insight into our collective unconscious and the subconscious working. Dreams will rearrange images in a phantasmagoric manner, in a theatric and phantasmagorical manner. And even though you cannot like do the whole heckin' Reddit science bit where you're proving it or whatever, what is really proving it? But dreams have influenced empires. Dreams have influenced many great men and many great people throughout history. And dreams, if you have the ability to recall dreams and write them down, even just in terms of a wellness thing, they have an immense benefit. I mean, don't take them as like a predictive gospel, but I think that dreams offer significant insights into a lot of the anxieties and issues working within your unconscious. And I do believe that in general, they are of vital importance to us as a full, well-rounded, individuated subject, to use the Jungian term. So there you go.
Now, I think I probably agree, but I guess my question is, how much are we able to access the potential information of our dreams? Like,
Hmm.
we know that there is this kind of latent peek into various mysterious things, but
Hmm.
also I feel like people can go wild misinterpreting the dreams and
Oh
coming to
yes, yes.
incorrect conclusions. So, what tools do we have?
Well, the basic form of the analyst is job is to sort of collect the data of the dream world and come up with a narrative. But you can do this yourself. I think you shouldn't view individual dreams as the key, as sort of a Rosetta Stone to yourself, but rather
Mhm.
over a period of time, a culmination of data that you were collecting from them that you can then juxtapose to each other as a running narrative of what is potentially going on in your unconscious. That is probably a more holistic approach than just saying that. And
Mm.
but some people, even Young said this, like some people have the ability to have it what he called and he got this from a lot of African tribes that he was studying, the big dream, the great dream, the dream that coalesces into a sort of moment in your life where a lot of things tend to come together. But most people don't have that. Most people need the cumulative factor of data that dreams can offer you as a running narrative over. There has to be a temporality to the dreams themselves. That's the only real prudent way to assess what the dreams are telling you in terms of your own unconscious states. And a lot of people can go off into wild misinterpretations. And I think that it's the job of also analyzing your dreams with another person, particularly an analyst. But if you don't have access to that, if you don't have the money for that, then even just juxtaposing your dreams with, for example, a significant other can be immensely beneficial. But it has to be a long term thing. It can't just be basing your dreams off of basing your analysis off of one or two dreams. It
One
has to be
dream.
something. Yeah. One dream. That's it.
I actually don't often remember my dreams, and
Hmm.
I obviously would remember more of them if I like set an alarm to go off at a random time in the middle of the night or
Oh
something
yeah, that's
like
how it
this.
happens. Yeah.
So, so is it worth is it worth interrupting my sleep just to get a little bit more insight into myself, or should I take the win that I'm sleeping well?
Yeah, it depends. I think if you dreams come to you, I think when you're at certain moments or certain thresholds in your life that they will naturally come to you. And I think if you're a well-adjusted and rounded person that has a successful career, hobbies, significant other, then probably, poking around, like forcing it's probably not the best idea.
Not
But if you
necessary.
do, yeah, but if you have obsessive character, if you do have a sort of itch that you have to scratch, then that's obviously different. So, yeah.
How about the type of dream that we see in the Bible, which, once correctly interpreted, serves as a foretelling of the future, and is
Mm,
delivering kind of divine information. So not just a peek into your subconscious that Jung would be happy with, but actually um, some symbolic form of communication from God.
mhm.
And then I suppose the alternative risk is, how about demonic visitations that could
Right.
happen while we sleep?
Right. They're very hard to gauge. Usually you gauge them after the fact in terms of the fruits. By fruits you shall know them. So, meaning that a lot of people, a lot of, I remember, I again, this goes, I mentioned Lawrence Krauss, but let's mention Richard Dawkins. I know that Morgoth was talking about Richard Dawkins, but I remember someone, he was talking about how like Moses may have had schizophrenia because he had visions from God, but someone retorted him. I believe was it like Lang, what was that name?
Oh
Lang
yes, William Lane
William,
Craig.
William Craig, yeah. He said, well, yeah, but like most people that have schizophrenia don't go on to influence whole civilizations and create new religions. So, um, yeah, I think dreams operate in the same way, in that if your dream is a stark communication from the beyond, from up on high or from below, I think over time that dream will prove itself to have an actual effect in the conscious world. That is how you tell that you've had a genuine message from either from above or below. So I think that, those dreams, of course, I'm not advising people to say that everyone talks to God, that, a lot of schizophrenics talk to God, they talk to God every Tuesday. But,
Mm, mm,
but I do think that people that have had dreams that have in very precarious states, people have had near death experiences and so forth, uh, there is a sort of messaging going on, even possession in terms of the demonic. But I think that you will know when that is genuine. You will know, put it that way. The dream, it will go be the fruits of that encounter will go beyond the dream itself. But everyone has dreams where God is telling them something, or even the devil is telling them something. I had a dream where Nietzsche told me something. So,
whoa,
yeah,
that's exciting. How did
yeah.
you know it was Nietzsche? I guess in a
Well, I
dream, you
knew it
just
was
gotta know
Nietzsche.
these things,
Yeah.
right?
We were in this dingy little pub, and there was this. I told this years ago, and my college friends, they could tell you, because I told them the next day. There was this yellowish light, this dim light above this sort of circular diner bar table, and Nietzsche was there, and he was smiling at me, and he called me over. I knew he was calling me over, and then I remember I was sitting there absolutely stunned in silence. And then I'll never forget this. Nietzsche told me, he goes, it doesn't matter what you do in this life as long as you have greatness of spirit. And I remember writing that down as soon as I woke up. So
Wow.
I talked to Nietzsche in my dream. So I need to like sell supplements. I need to masculinity course.
Yeah, you can put that on a T-shirt and,
I need an AI edit of like Giga Chad Nietzsche now. That quote.
Well, I thought that was a fantastic round, and I'm gonna
Oh
give
yeah.
you 16 points.
Wow.
Round 5. Technology, natural sciences, or Christology?
This is a tough one. This is a tough one. Has anyone pitched Christology yet? Christology or no?
One person picked Christology, I think. It's
Hmm.
definitely been an unpopular category. Half the people don't even know what it means. It's kind of a subset of theology, so
Yeah.
I don't know that my categories are, you know, I
Crossing
don't know if
over.
they've I don't know if there's various principles for picking categories where they should be
Mhm.
separate and non-overlapping and such. I have not
Well,
followed that.
I talk about technology a lot, so let's go with because the Christology might expose me as a midwit. So let's go with Christology. Let's go with that. Let's go
All
with
right.
that. Yeah.
Okay, Jesus was born of a virgin. Jesus is subservient to the Father, and Jesus is present in the Eucharist. By the way, I think I've just remembered the other person who picked Christology might have been, do you know Devin Tracy of Atheist is
You got
Unstoppable?
Devin Tracy on?
Yeah, that episode has
He's
yet
still
to air.
around?
Yeah, he talked to me for quite a long time. Even after we finished recording, we were chatting for
That's
like
crazy.
it was
I haven't
great.
heard that name in years.
No.
Man,
As you can
Devin
imagine, these
Tracy.
were not topics that he was giving an orthodox answer to.
Let's go with
I suppose at the time that this airs, that episode will already have been up.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
everybody watching already knows what happened in that conversation.
Let's
Actually,
go.
it's already up. He's already put that up on his channel. So there you go. You can go
Okay. There you go.
Which one?
Did he go like epically owned a Bible study person?
He really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, that's good.
He was surprisingly convivial and well disposed to me, and I was very grateful for his attitude.
Yeah.
To I think
that's good.
Given that I basically I share like so few views with him.
Yeah.
But yeah,
God.
we've kind of like I used to watch all those old like you mentioned William Lane Craig,
videos, yeah.
like the Christopher Hitchens Lane Craig debates.
Yeah.
I used to watch them as well. Obviously, I was kind of on the other side of all those debates, but nonetheless, we kind of had surprising amount in common, shared references and such.
Yeah. Let's go with Jesus born of a virgin.
All right.
Yes.
I assume you're going to be arguing for.
That's the bare minimum of Catholic theology. That's like, that's the end.
You mean like
that's the buy-in, yeah. No, to me, I think even on a symbolic level, it must be. There is a lot of theological weight. I mean, even I don't know in your opinion, but in Catholicism at least, it really is such a monumental importance, and Christ being delivered into the world through a virgin, through something that seems absurd, that seems impossible. Yes, I 100% think, yeah, yes.
I guess there's the.
Well, what's your opinion? I mean, you're.
Oh well, obviously, I also believe that Jesus was born of a virgin.
Of course,
and I'd say that the number one reason that that's significant is because the fact that Adam passes his sin onto his descendants suggests that it's kind of a patrilineal, original sin comes through the father. So the fact that Jesus was born with not without a human father means he has a divine father, which means that he's both God and man, for a start, and also is able to escape the cycle of
he breaks. Yes, Gerard talks about this. Like he breaks that cycle of sacrifice. He breaks that cycle of sin, and that's a necessity that he breaks that cycle to give unto the world. So that's. I
mean, how do you? Romans 8 talks about the fact that in order to be an effective sacrifice, he has to be born in the flesh. How do you have somebody who has genuine human flesh and yet without sin? And that's where the mother Mary and father, God the Father, coming together, produces this, unique possibility.
Right.
Although I suppose that this is an interesting kind of Christological tangent from this question, but so we believe that Jesus pre-existed the incarnation. for example, it is taught that the world was created, that Jesus had some involvement, and you could talk about Jesus being the Word, and obviously words are used for, there's
Even in the
also
Old Testament, there was preambles to the coming of Christ.
theophanies, right? That
Yes, yeah.
various people who are kind of, you on first reading you think it's an angel, and then you think a bit harder and you're like,
You're
hang
like,
on a minute,
yeah,
that might have been Jesus. So okay, fine, we've got Jesus kicking around before he is made flesh.
yeah.
Did he have human form prior to the incarnation? And if not, then does he have human form into eternity? These are, I feel like I've
Mm.
delivered you with a question here that's too easy,
That's
so I'm
literally
trying to like
impossible.
level it up.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Um,
the Jesus was born of a virgin is too easy. It's like, yes.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm giving you some more like more mysterious
I'd
aspects
have
of
to like
this.
consult a lot of Catholic theology on that, but
Sure, sure.
I do think that there are a lot of people that said that even in the flesh there were permutations of Christ, but I don't know about that. Before the virgin birth is very complicated. Probably not. I lean towards the sort of prudent, the sort of the pragmatic answer would be that Jesus being born of a virgin, that was the point. But whether Jesus will come back in the flesh, um, that's very complicated because a lot of people have a lot of misreadings, particularly Revelation. A lot of, unfortunately, a lot of like American evangelical Protestants have the sort of like, second coming thing going on.
The
But
rapture and all this.
the rapture, yeah, but no, but I believe it is. I mean, it's even in the Bible that I know a lot of there are people that argue back and forth. I'm not a theologian, I'm not an apologist, but I do believe that it is said that the second coming, I mean, it will come like a thief in the night. It's not a time, there's no timeline for Jesus to become enfleshed once more. I mean, really, I think, was there a Christ figure throughout the ages? Maybe, perhaps, but yeah, I think that it is unknowable because it is not given over to us the way that a lot of people that are obsessed with like end times Christianity believe it to be. I simply disagree. I think that it is much more profound and much more of a guarantor of that gift Christ has given us to say that we shall not know the hour. Uh, but that's the thing about original sin. A lot of people mistake original sin to be like you were born evil, and it's like this very like stereotypical sort of like Hollywood movie version of original sin. Whereas original sin means just you are born into this world. You are at that time you are sin just means a privation in some ways, right? Like you are apart from that, but you will come into that union with the sort of community of Christ, right? So sin doesn't mean like you're born evil, you're terrible, like that's a very like low, like a lot of people that, and unfortunately I think a big problem is the way that uh in Catholicism and Orthodoxy and in Protestantism and Christianity in general, I think a big problem is just the pedagogy attached to a lot of very fundamental Christian principles. Unfortunately, a lot of our churches have done a very terrible job to where a lot of people have a sort of religious trauma. I know, I mean, I know like that word gets abused by a lot of like leftoids, but I do think people that have had genuinely negative experiences with Christianity, a lot of it does come to a very poor teaching of Christian values and perspectives from people who are ostensibly learned and who should know better. And I think
Mm.
even the media depiction of that question of original sin has been, like there used to be a lot of deeper religious education that young children went through that nowadays has sort of been swallowed up in a lot of like social gospel, a lot of like quasi liberation theology stuff. And I think those fundamentals of what original sin actually means gets lost to where people mean original sin when they think of original sin, they think of like some Hollywood movie where some like some person is like has a crisis of faith and they become like a Reddit atheist because I don't know, when you're 15 years old you read the God Delusion, so therefore you're like, I'm not sinful, how can you say a baby is sinful? It's just such a stupid thing, right? That doesn't mean like a baby is sinful. A baby is in a baby's like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like their depiction of good and evil is so childish in some ways, the Hollywood narrative of it, that I think like really the actual understanding of things like original sin gets lost, and the actual understanding of Christ's sacrifice unto the world gets lost. And it's yeah. So,
by the way, I did a little bit of research, and apparently the standard line here for Catholics and Protestants and Orthodox, I think, all alike, is that Jesus was not in human form until the incarnation, but
yes.
maintains his humanity into eternity.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So
I mean,
there you
that's
are.
yeah. Oh,
All
but
right,
I just mean like the rapture, like if Jesus is going to come again as a man, that's something that we don't know.
Well,
about. You know?
no, we do see post resurrection, but prior to his ascension, his body seemed to be different and have different
Yes.
properties to what it had before that time.
He was also a man, so it had to have different properties. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, the description in Revelation with these like, you know, it seems to basically be glowing, and when he talks, it's like the sound of rushing waters and so on. But then also people recognized him as Jesus who had seen him before. So there is some continuity, and I think the same will be the case for our bodies when we move from this life into the new creation. We likewise may find that our bodies are, you know, what does it mean to have a renewed and perfected form of our bodies?
We'll be Giga
Presumably, we will all have giant chins. I can only assume.
But that is, but that's interesting theologically, though, that people did recognize Christ as you know, as the way they did when they recognized him when he was enfleshed. So that does have a lot of, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm giving you another 15. That brings us to our final round: literature, software and mathematics, or eschatology.
I feel like we dealt with a lot of theological questions. I'm math illiterate, so that would just totally expose me. Let's go with literature. Let's go. Okay. That's there's an art one. Finally,
that's a nice way to finish.
You're begging for an art one right now.
Sorry about that. The distinction between high and low genre fiction is arbitrary. Children's literature is as complex and significant as adult literature, or translation is impossible.
Oh boy, they're all good ones. Distinction between high and low, arbitrary.
All right.
I totally disagree. I wholeheartedly agree with Theodore Adorno. I know a controversial Frankfurt School, but I wholeheartedly agree because the destruction between high and low genres of fiction and literature and art itself has been I mean, Frederick Jameson said it was a cornerstone of postmodernism. And he's correct, but I think the problem is that even beyond postmodernism, what you have nowadays is you have a lot of people in universities, a lot of people in media criticism, a lot of people that are doing this whole like heckin' wholesome, let people enjoy things, and like video, like left-leaning soillennial video essayists like Quentin Reviews that try to like talk with the same breadth and depth of insight into like children's media that they would Ovid or Goethe or Proust, or even something as even the dawn of the modern novel. Like, say, you can't really compare Wyndham Lewis or Capote even, or even like certain forms of pulp that are still quite meaningful. You can't compare that to like The Mandalorian, you know, or like R.R. Martin. Like, it's the destruction of the high and low distinction.
The Mandalorian is an absolutely devastating choice to represent modernity.
Yeah. I remember one of Marnite, anime profile picture, called it Mandalorian masculinity. I think that may have been Atrazine Griper, but anyways, the destruction of the high and low distinction in literature, in the work of art, has been so fundamentally corrosive to modern culture that I can't even begin. It's going to take literal generations to crawl us out of the let people enjoy things. Like just the other day, I saw these like age. I mean, I'm an aging millennial, but like, an aging millennial. But like I saw like these aging millennials gushing over this like children's show about a dog and his family not selling their house. And the reason people do this is because a lot of people who are in this like weirdo arrested development state, they can't really approach quote unquote high literature or high artwork because that's seen as very stuffy and that's too sincere. So what they do is they colonize the fictions and the literatures and the media designed for literal children to have these profound moments. And it's like, basically creating children's shows for adults watching it, not really for children, because they're doing it as a form of psychological cushioning, because we have this fundamental inability to actually appreciate something that is satiating and meaningful on a deeper level, but something that's also sincere. I mean, this is the problem when you have this like marvelification of reality, because then ethics, politics, culture, religion, all of it becomes marvelified. All of it becomes this slop of low forms of entertainment. And when people try to legitimize, when the left coded millennial video essayist tries to legitimize the latest slop entertainment as if it's analyzing even the greatest pieces of cinema, you can't really compare Tarkovsky to I don't know, like even like Christopher. I shouldn't bash Christopher Nolan, but like,
Michael
like
Bay.
like any like any like sort of Batman or any like Marvel, like whatever, or whatever popular, even like things that pretend to be high art, but it's like has a mass appeal. What ends up happening is it just becomes a discourse machine. And the reason you care about it, the only films that survive now are films that you care about because they're discourse machines. They're troll gazes. They're designed for online discourse. Barbie's the perfect example. The Civil War movie's the perfect example. Like, even directors that have made films that I think are quite meaningful and transcendental. Like even like Alex Garland made Annihilation. He made films like helped make films like 28 Days Later. Even Men was like weirdo and esoteric and surreal. But apparently people are telling you the Civil War thing is exactly what we all predicted it's going to be. It's just going to be a discourse machine. It's going to be slop. It's going to be about Trump. And the thing is, when you elevate things that do not deserve to be elevated, you have a culture that no longer recognizes what genuine emotion and genuine sentiment really is. So I'm like a total curmudgeon when it comes to this. I think the destruction of the high and low distinction in culture and in fiction and in art is just, the fruits have been disastrous.
Can you identify anything that you consider to be high form of fiction that's been created recently? Like what's something that's new and good, basically?
Oh God. I'm sure
Maybe
there's a lot of
it's
indie
hard
films.
to identify it immediately because sometimes true masterpieces prove their worth over time. They kind of settle.
Yes, that's the big problem, right? Okay, I'm not saying this because he's my friend, but Marty Phillips's book Millennium, it speaks to us as a generation. The stories are phenomenal. I covered this on my podcast with him. I think he truly made a book of short stories that speaks to the experience in a fantastical way, mind you, in a fantastical way, but nevertheless speaks to the core experiences of the waning and quickly culturally irrelevant millennial generation. That the millennials are now waking up and saying, what did we really produce in this life? What did the 2010s produce? The post 2010s millennial is a husk. And I think there has to be a lot of serious examination. And that's why I so loved reading Millennium, because it was a serious interrogation of those sentiments, those motifs, the disrupted path us millennials were going down. And I think that, Marty Phillips truly is a great writer. There's other ones too. I mean, I'm sure if you look, there's a lot of great indie films. There's a lot of great music still being made. works of art. I mean, there's tons of them. Even again, another person I quite admire is Zach Brown. I actually went to see his gallery in Pittsburgh, and
Hmm.
it's quite phenomenal. And I'm not just saying this because again, he's like, more sympathetic to our side of things. But I do think that there's a lot of like new realism. There's a lot of like post odd medium stuff that's to me not exactly hitting it. But I do think that there are people that are still trying to create a lot of sincere and a lot of honest and a lot of meaningful art and literature out there. It's just a matter of looking. But it's so
Mm.
hard because people that get promoted in our culture are people that not just appeal to the lowest common denominator, but appeal to a kitschified version of reality that often bleeds
Yeah.
into politics. I mean, the contemporary art world, there are still people that are producing stuff in the contemporary art world that I find quite meaningful, but there are other ones that are like most of them are just producing political schlock and kitsch. And by the way, buy my book when it comes out. I'll tell you all about it. How the destruction of the high-low distinction is terrible. So hopefully by September it will come out.
Awesome.
I'm
Well, I'll
yeah.
have to have you back on the channel to talk when that comes out. And
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
um,
Neoliberal
but
Kitsch, Art and Aesthetics, Online Art and Aesthetics in the 21st Century. That's the title. So
okay,
yeah.
look out for it. Maybe by the time you're watching this, this is out already, and you should go and purchase. I'm giving you 17,
Bro!
finishing on an absolute high.
From strength to strength.
Now let me refresh the high score table and find out where you've come. Oh, you're at the top.
I've crushed that.
You are
I've
the winner. Absolutely destroyed the competition, Gio. Look at all these people who are
Oh my
eating your
god.
dust.
Oh,
So I
oh,
hope
I
that feels
even
good.
destroyed a turnip seed.
Turnip seed
I
right
destroyed
behind you.
AA. Oh my god.
Yeah,
That's
look at all these people.
incredible. Prude only got 71 years, got 70. Senegal only got 65? Wait,
Well, yes. I mean, I will be
who's
honest. There is a certain advantage to being a later guest. I'm not saying
that
that.
is true. You have the presentist bias. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't want to diminish your victory here in the slightest, but if you
Who's got
start
the
to think of
lowest?
yourself as being twice as good as Pharaoh, then I can't agree
Whoa!
with
How did that happen? I even crushed Epistolic Matters.
Poor Nathan Hood, who is,
Poor Nathan Hood.
one of our best commentators and finest minds,
Oh
has
yes.
been denigrated by this format. So
Oh my
I
god. Yeah,
feel somewhat bad
this
about
is
all that.
worse than the NHL playoffs bracket here.
Anyway, thank
I
you so
can't-
much for joining me, Gio.
By the way, I can't believe the Maple Leafs got the Boston. Ah man, I can't believe they got the Bruins. But anyways,
Oh, you're
I'm
such
crying
a
right now.
Canadian.
Yeah.
All right.